In this podcast, you'll learn some polite expressions so that you can sound more like a native speaker. These will be especially useful for you if you work in customer services or maybe at a call centre and you need to express yourself politely in English. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés con Reza y Craig.
Hello, and if you're a new listener to the podcast, you are very, very welcome. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with nearly 50 years, that's 50 years of teaching English between us, Reza and I are going to help you improve your English and take it up to the next level. How are you doing, Reza?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
And I'm really pleased that we're recording in Reza's lovely flat today because there's very noisy workmen working in the building where I live with lots of banging and drilling. So we've come here to get away from the noise. And it's always good to be in Reza's flat. And first this week, we're going to hear a voice message from friend of the podcast, Marion.
Marion, hi. I had little time recently to write on this page. Nevertheless, I have listened to the last podcast. Thank you for your teaching. It's awesome to hear you again, knowing that your listeners are from all around the world. You made my effort easier, sure. Cheers.
Well, thank you, Marion. It was lovely to get your message. And yes, that's one thing that we love about doing this podcast, and that's hearing from people from all over the world, listeners who are hopefully getting something from the podcast, hopefully improving their English. And we have created a lovely community of wonderful people in so many different countries. That's one thing that gives us a lot of pleasure.
Yes, Marion, thanks very much for your message. There is a couple of things that perhaps we could improve in your message. I think you said, I had hardly no time. I think that's what I heard. I had hardly no time. But you should say, I had hardly any time. Because the word hardly in English is considered a negative. It means not much. So we can't have double negative in English. You can't say hardly and no. So you have to say, I had hardly any time.
And we couldn't quite understand what you said right at the end, Marion, so I'm sorry we can't help you with that, but it was a bit confusing. Why not send us another message? We'd love to hear you and hopefully help you a little bit with your English. So send us another message. It would be great to hear from you again.
Yes, please do, Marion. Thanks.
Next, we have a message from Diana from Panama.
Hi, I'm Diana from Panama. I recently discovered your podcast. I listened to some of them, and it's a really great way to improve English. I'm willing to do that. I was wondering if you had some topics, or you could do a topic about how you could sound more polite and empathic with customers, like in call center or in personal way. I would like to know some expressions or some ways that you could sound more polite to help or understand people, because I think is some of my weakness in English. I would like to sound more native or more natural in that way, to make really understand and really help the customer, not sounds like a robot or something like that. And thanks.
Nobody wants to sound like a robot, Diana. I think most of us have had experiences when we've phoned up companies and got that robotic sounding voice that sounds so impersonal and horrible. So yeah, we don't want any people sounding like artificial intelligence.
Yes, I would totally agree with what Craig says. So you want to sound more empathetic. Empathetic. I think Craig, maybe Deanna said, did she say something like empathic, perhaps?
Yes, there was a bit of confusion, I think, Diana, with the verb to empathize. You empathize with people. And the noun is empathy. So you can show empathy to people. But the adjective I think you were looking for is empathetic. Empathetic. So what's that? 4 syllables? Where's that? Empathetic. Yes, empathetic. And you need to stress the third syllable. Empathetic. I want to speak in an empathetic way.
And just to clarify something for you, Deanna, and everybody, the word empathetic here sounds right. It's a good word to use here. But let's not confuse it with another word. It's not exactly the same as friendly. You probably also want to sound friendly. Friendly in Spanish is simpático or simpática. So let's not confuse them. Friendly, simpático, right? To sound like you're a nice person. Whereas empathetic is not exactly that. Empathetic means that you understand their problem. So they're similar, but they're not exactly the same. But you probably want to sound both. You probably want to sound friendly and empathetic, I would say.
Absolutely. That's exactly how you want to sound. And we have collected some expressions that we hope will be useful for you, Diana, and other people who are working in call centers or with customer service. But I'll also refer you to a past episode that we did, and I think this will be helpful also. It's episode 345, and it's called How to Be Indirect and Make Polite Requests in English. Go to inglespodcast.com/345 and listen to that episode also.
Okay, Craig, shall we start by suggesting some ways of offering help?
Absolutely. How can we help people today?
Exactly. How can we help you today?
How can we help you?
That's exactly what you could say, Deanna, when you answer the phone. So you could say, how can I? Well, sometimes you say we. It depends. If you're speaking on behalf of, in the name of other people, you could say plural we. But it probably sounds even friendlier if you just say I, because then it sounds really personal. So you could say, how can I help you? And we often add the word today. How can I help you today?
Or another expression you could use, what can I do for you? What can I do for you, sir? What can I do for you, madam? Now notice this intonation. The intonation is rising and then it falls. It goes up and then it goes down. What can I do for you? How can I help you?
So after you've offered help, then the customer's going to explain the problem a little bit. And then after that, you will want to put the customer at ease. To put someone at ease means to make them feel relaxed, to make them feel that they don't need to worry, that you're now going to start to help them with their problem. So they can start to relax now. They can be at ease. And to do that, you could say something like, it's my pleasure to be of assistance. The word assistance in English means help. It's a false friend. Sometimes people think of the Spanish asistencia, which just means attending a class. No, it's not that. Assistance in English is help. So you could say, it's my pleasure to be of assistance.
Or you could also say, I'm glad to be of service. Glad, G-L-A-D, really means happy. So you can also say happy. I'm happy to be of service. Or I'm glad to be of service.
Or you could simply remind them what your function is, your role, by saying, I'm here to help. So they're very clear that you're on their side. I'm here to help.
Or a bit stronger, I'm delighted, or I would be delighted to help. I'd be delighted to help, or I'd be happy to help. Remember, you can see all of these expressions on the webpage at inglespodcast.com/396 for this episode.
So once the customer has explained some of the details of their problem, then you'll probably want to show some empathy, to show that you understand what's happening and how frustrated it must be for them and what it must be like to be in their situation. You want to be empathetic. So you might say something like, I hear what you're saying. Or perhaps, I understand where you're coming from.
People want to be heard, don't they? So if you can assure the person and let them know that you're listening, you're paying attention, and you understand their problem, that's very, very powerful. And that word understand, I think, is very, very powerful. I understand the problem, sir. I understand what you're saying. I understand where you're coming from. Does help to reassure and show empathy to the person you're helping. And don't forget to use the name of the person if you have it. So, yes, I hear what you're saying, Mr. Shah. Or I understand where you're coming from, Mr. Shah. Using their name also is a way of personalizing the empathy you're showing.
Or another way of personalizing is saying that, well, if you were them, you would feel exactly the same. So you could say something like, that would frustrate me too. Or that would upset me too. So you're showing that, yep, if I were you, I would react in exactly the same way. I understand you.
Another example, that's understandable, sir, or that's understandable, madam, or that's perfectly understandable. You're putting yourself in the client's position and situation and showing that you can see the problem from their point of view. That's perfectly understandable, sir.
Because you have to bear in mind, that means don't forget, that they've probably told you that they're a bit annoyed. They've got some kind of problem. They're a bit annoyed at your company. So rather than being on the defensive saying, well, we're a great company, what's your problem? No, you want to be saying, that's perfectly understandable. You are at fault, perhaps. You may have done something wrong. You're not immediately saying, no, we've done nothing wrong. It's you. No, you're saying, that's understandable. Yep, these are mistakes that happen. And if I were you, I would feel exactly the same way.
And there's a saying in customer service that goes back many years, and that's the customer is always right. I would maybe change that just a little bit, and I would say the customer is almost always right. But why not let the customer know and say, yes, you're quite right. Yes, sir. Yes, madam, you're quite right. So you're giving the other person permission to feel a little bit upset or a little bit angry. And notice I used the word yes at the beginning. You can use that for all of these empathetic expressions. Yes, I hear what you're saying. Yes, I understand where you're coming from. Yes, sir, that would frustrate me too. Yes, that's perfectly understandable. And yes, you're quite right, madam.
So once you've shown empathy, then you might, depending on the situation, have to apologize. If you think the customer really has been treated badly, or at least they could have been treated much better, then you're going to have to apologize. So you could say something like, I'm sorry about, or I'm sorry for. I'll give you an example. Yes, madam, I'm sorry for the delay, or I'm sorry about that misunderstanding. So simply the word sorry. I'm sorry about, or I'm sorry for.
And there Reza used a noun after the preposition. He said, I'm sorry about the delay. Remember, if you use a verb after a preposition like about or for, it must be a gerund. So another example, I'm sorry about sending the wrong information. Or with a negative, I'm sorry for not getting back to you sooner.
Another expression which goes with for is apologize for something. So you could say, I sincerely apologize for the delay, or I sincerely apologize for not getting back sooner.
And we're using the word sincerely here, but it's also important to sound sincere. You need to sound like you really mean what you're saying. I'm really sorry about the delay, sir. I sincerely apologize. And that's where word stress can be your friend. You need to stress the important words. Another example, our sincerest apologies for the misunderstanding.
Another one you could say is, this should never have happened. And you might add, I apologize. So you end in a very, very clear message that I apologize. We're saying sorry. This should never have happened. I apologize.
And another expression I just thought of, I can't apologize enough. So words are not enough. I can't apologize enough. There are no words in the English language that would make this apology. No, don't say that. Just say I can't apologize enough for your inconvenience.
You've probably spent some time talking to the client, the customer, by this stage. So then you have to thank them for being patient, for explaining everything. Maybe they've had to explain it 5 times to 5 different call center operators. I mean, that's happened to all of us. It's very frustrating. We don't like to have to keep repeating ourselves and not get anywhere. So it's very important then to say, thank you for your patience.
Or you could use the word appreciate. I appreciate your patience. And remember, you can use really to make it even stronger. So use that after the pronoun. I really appreciate your patience with this matter.
Or the word sincerely, again, I'm sincerely grateful for your time. Or I'm sincerely grateful for you taking the time to explain the situation.
Now, what might happen with people working in customer services, like Deanna, for example, you may need to check some information and then speak to the client again in the future. So here are some expressions you could use for this to buy you some time so that you can check information. You could say, let me get back to you on this. Let me get back to you on this. It's a phrasal verb. To get back to someone means return the call, get in contact again at some time in the future. So let me get back to you later.
Another useful expression is to double check something. I imagine some call center operators have access to information on a computer screen, but they need a few seconds or a few minutes to check that information. So you might say something like, please give me a moment to double check that I have the right answer for you. To double check, to check again.
And we've had the phrasal verb just now, to get back to someone. There's another phrasal verb, look into. And to look into something means to check something. And it's quite a nice phrasal verb to use because it's kind of like you're a detective and you're looking into the possible problems and the solutions. So you could say, let me look into this issue. It's probably better to use the word issue. It sounds nicer than problem, because problem sounds very negative. If you can look into an issue, it sounds a bit better than solving a problem. Let me look into this issue. Would it be okay for me to get back to you on this later?
There may be some difficulty in understanding the details, or simply there might be a bad connection. The telephone line might not be good, so you may not have heard very clearly, or there could be other reasons why you're not quite sure of the information. In other words, you may want to clarify what you've heard. So we've got some useful expressions for clarifying, for getting clarification. You might say to the customer, let me confirm that I've got this right. And then you'll repeat the information back to them. Let me confirm that I've got this right.
And I think this area of clarifying and making clarifications is extremely important when you're speaking in a second language, because it's very easy to misunderstand what's being said. And I use expressions like this in Spanish a lot just to make sure I've understood what someone has told me. So as Reza said, one is let me confirm I've got this right. Another expression you could use, could I just confirm the details, please? And then you repeat the information the client has given you.
Another useful expression is to make sure. To be sure that you've got the right information. So you could say, I want to make sure I've understood everything correctly. I'll repeat that. I want to make sure I understood everything correctly.
Or please correct me if I've misunderstood anything. Please correct me if I've misunderstood anything.
So one thing is to make sure, to check that you can be sure that you know something is right. And our next category is to reassure. Reassure, so reassuring. Reassuring somebody means giving them the confidence that it's under control, that they needn't worry. You can be sure that I'm going to sort this out for you, to find a solution. So you need to reassure the customer. You could say something like, I'll get this sorted out. Don't worry, I'll get this sorted out. To sort out is to solve a problem, solve an issue. I'll get this sorted out.
Or another expression, I'll fix these issues for you. Remember, they're not problems, are they? They're issues. I'll fix these issues immediately for you, sir.
Or another one could be using another phrasal verb, take care of. I'll take care of this for you. To take care of something. I'll take care of this, or I'll take care of this issue for you.
And another area of useful expressions we could look at is giving alternatives. And why is that important? Well, you don't want to say no to clients. Nobody likes to hear the word no. And I think this is true also in your day-to-day life. If someone invites you somewhere or asks you to do something, you don't want to just give a no. You can refuse and then give an alternative. And that really helps. That goes a long way. So if you can't do exactly what the customer wants, you could say something like, I'm afraid that isn't possible right now. However, we can blah, blah, blah. And then you give an alternative route or an alternative direction for the client to go down. You're offering a slightly different solution if you can't do exactly what the customer wants. Don't forget to begin with I'm afraid or I'm sorry but. So you're apologizing before you're saying no. I'm afraid that isn't possible at the moment. However, we can blah, blah, blah.
Or another possibility, after you've said something like, I'm afraid that isn't possible, you might say, here's what we can offer, or here's what we can do instead. Instead means in place of. So the customer may want something, but you can't give exactly that, but you've got an alternative. So here's what we can offer instead, or here's what we can do instead. And you explain the alternative.
And a similar expression is another solution would be. So you're offering another solution. Another solution would be blah, blah, blah.
Now, to end the call, you're not just going to put the phone down, or you're not just going to say bye-bye and put it down. No, you've got to say something nice and to make sure that the conversation has ended, because you might think it has, but as far as the customer's concerned, it hasn't. So you better make sure, because if they have another question for you and you go, well, then you've annoyed them again. So you better check. You'd better ask something like, can I help you with anything else? Very often they add the word today in more modern English. Can I help you with anything else today? And if you want to be a bit more polite, add sir or madam. Can I help you with anything else today, sir? Or today, madam?
Or perhaps, is there anything else I can do for you today? Well, for me, I don't know if you agree, Reza, but today sounds a bit like an Americanism.
Yes.
Isn't it more common in American English?
That's true, yeah.
Which I'm guessing for Diana in Panama, she would want to add that today. How are you today, sir? For example. So back to ending the call. Is there anything else I can do for you today? Is there anything else I can help you with today?
Yes, for some reason, sorry for getting off the point a little bit, but even in restaurants, so not in a call center, you often hear this word today, don't you? Like in American restaurants, they might say, I'll be your waiter for today.
I'll be your server for today.
Yeah, or your server for today. As if like, if you come on a different day, there'll be a different one. Well, maybe, I don't know. But this word today, it just seems to make it more kind of personal, more, today. So today's kind of a special day. Perhaps that's the idea. Today's the special day, you know?
I went into a restaurant in the USA once, and a young boy came over to the table and said, "Good afternoon, sir. I hope everything is okay. My name's Gerald, and I'm going to be your water waiter or your water server for today." They had a separate waiter for the water and a separate waiter for the wine and a separate waiter for the soft. It was amazing. And there was one waiter for the ice. So,
Wow.
yeah, a bit extreme.
A good organization, though. If you don't want to use either of those expressions we've given as examples with today, you could say, please let me know if you have any other questions. Please let me know if you have any other questions.
You could use the word hesitate with a negative. So don't hesitate to call if there's any way we can help you. Or don't hesitate to get in touch would be a little more informal. Again, you're making a personal connection with the client. Get in touch. Don't hesitate to get in touch if there's any way I can help you in the future. So, Diana, we hope these expressions are useful for you and anyone in the service industry. Remember, to see these expressions written, go to the show notes at inglespodcast.com/396. But now it's your turn to practice your English. As Diana and Marian did in this episode, we would love for you to send us a voice message. You can do that by going to speakpipe.com. That's speakpipe.com/Inglespodcast. And you can send us a message using that service as long as it's 90 seconds or less.
If you want, you could send us an email. Write to Craig. You'll find him at craig@inglespodcast.com or me, belfastreza@gmail.com.
And if you go to the Mansion Inglés online store, there's a selection of courses that you could buy that will help you improve your English level. Go to store.mansioningles.net.
As ever, at the end of the podcast, we like to thank all the people who sponsor us through the Patreon scheme. Unfortunately, we haven't got time to read everybody's name, but what we do is read the most recent sponsors, the ones who've just joined us recently. And what those people do is donate as little as $1.20 a month. 20 cents is to cover the VAT tax. And as a thank you to them, we give them instant access to our most recent audio transcriptions. Who are our most recent sponsors, Craig?
I'm pleased you asked me, Reza. They are Marianne, Silvia Escartin Garcia, Rosa Campos, Aurora, Salvador Cuadrado Olvera, Uziv, Jordi Casanovas Masip, Luis. Thank you very much. And extra special thanks to the people who are donating more than the $1 minimum every month, and that is Tatiana Vasquez, Perla Jimenez and Raquel Sanchez. Thank you very much to you and to everyone who is supporting us on Patreon.
Craig, if someone's interested in joining the scheme, how do they do that?
They can go to Patreon, patreon.com/Inglespodcast, and they can sign up there. What's next week, Reza?
Next week, we'll be talking about disability.
And that's thanks to a question we've received from Carla from Rio de Janeiro. So thank you very much, Carla. We will be spending next week's episode discussing vocabulary and speaking about the theme of disability. Until next time, thank you so much for listening this week. Have a wonderful week, and we'll speak to you next Sunday. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.